Dive. Yes, that's what we're here to talk about. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for coming in. Looks like we even have some people coming in all the way from Toronto, one of my own home states. Graduated high school back there. We're going to let some other people come and join us in just a few minutes. We're going to hear from our roving reporter. Yeah. We're going to hear from our huggable David. We're going to talk to our intern Nate again. But we want to thank you all for joining us. We do want you to give us some thumbs up, give us some likes, let us know what you'd like to talk about. Let us know some of your favorite dive sites. Let us know some of your favorite dives, period. But the main thing that we're here to do, guys, gals, talk scuba. Yes, that's scuba snacks. Scuba snack! Because we can't dive right now, so we might as well talk about diving. That's what we'd be talking about if we were at a bar, if we could go to a bar, right? We'd be sitting around talking about diving. So, yes, all the way from Toronto, Kevin, good. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our panelists for the day. You probably missed him the last time because he's been on every single show thus far, except last week or the last couple of days ago. We've got our huggable David. David, say hi to everybody.
Hey everyone, very glad to be back. Very glad to be on the show again.
We also have our young Nate, one of our fine interns with us. Say hi, Nate.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Oh, he's the rock star, Nate. Now he just learned how to tie dye, and he's going to show off that Rainbow Reef shirt. That's cool. We've also got our friendly favorite roaming reporter DJ in the house.
How you doing, guys? Live from Key Largo Harbor.
There you go. So again, thank you all for joining us. So about the last time we were talking about conservation, how it affects us, how we can affect conservation. One of the things that we wanted to touch on again is, yes, we do have that Project Aware course coming up on the 25th and again on the 29th. There are different times. So if you want more information about that, go ahead and send us a private message. We've already got some signups for the course, so sign up now. The spots are going soon. Something that we didn't get a chance to talk about was the Choral Watch. Now, this is a really cool program that I was able to bring to Rainbow Reef back in 2012, but it sounds like David has actually done some stuff on it. So, David, would you like to talk to us a little bit about the Choral Watch?
Sure. It's very similar to the dive against debris in that you go and in this case, we're looking at the health of the coral rather than debris, but the University of Queensland then catalogs everything and they have a database. And this is particularly important because we're all concerned about coral bleaching and that sort of thing. It's very simple. I just want to show you. Basically, you take this down with you. This is the Choral Watch card. It's waterproof. And the instructions are basically to randomly pick a coral head and then randomly pick another one, maybe a few kicks later. You want to do this 20 times. And then you hold the chart up to the coral head that you're at and you register its lightest color and its darkest color. And then that goes into the database and it's a way to track coral health. I do recommend that you bring a light with you for this because some of these colors fade out pretty quickly depending on how deep you go. But it's something we do here at Rainbow Reef, and it's something that really anyone can do, citizen science, sort of like dive against debris.
Wonderful. I see some people are already signing in and saying hi. David Brown is signing in. He's doing his IDC online right now with us through the classroom of Zoom. Yes, we have several IDC and Dive Master candidates that are actually able to do some of their coursework. So thank you guys. Thank you all for signing in and joining us. Thank you, David. That's a wonderful thing. One of the things that I'm going to be very interested to see is if there's going to be any change after this period of time that we haven't been able to get in the water, if that may have changed what some of the colors and what some of the bleaching may have to do with the health of the coral itself. Nate, have you had a chance to do any of these Choral Watch dives by any chance?
Not yet. I so badly want to. I haven't had the opportunity to do so yet, but not personally. I've heard nothing but.
Oh, that's okay. So, Nate, what kind of specialties might you think would lend themselves to a coral watch so that you didn't touch things while you were underwater?
Well, number one would definitely be peak performance buoyancy. You want to make sure that when you're looking at the health of these reefs, you don't want to touch it themselves because unfortunately, this isn't a petting zoo. Everything that we touch, it's going to be very harmful for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's wonderful. As a matter of fact, many of our interns used to be part of the Coral Watch program and would go out once a month to do a Coral Watch dive. And then Queensland actually stopped the program for a little while, and then they've brought it back on. And so we're hoping that we can actually get this back up and running and flowing again. Because again, the more data, like we talked about the other day, the more data that we can capture and share, the more we can learn some information and find out the better ways that we can help the oceans, right? That's really what we want to do. Now, I'd like to go to our roving reporter because one of the ways that we can help our oceans is good boat maintenance, good boat handling, mooring, parking, all kinds of stuff. So I'd like to hear from DJ what some ideas he has for us.
How you guys doing? Um, I'm here on the deck of one of our boats. Some of you may have been on it. It's called the Tropical Legend. It's a 46-foot Newton, and it has two motors, and it's one of the boats that we use to take people out to the reef, obviously. And relative to stemming off of what Ross was talking about, out in the all the reefs out in front of Key Largo are part of the National Marine Sanctuary. So they have sanctuary protection areas, and inside all of those sanctuary protection areas, you might have been diving down here thinking that, hey, um, you know, they just put these mooring balls in for the convenience of the dive boats or something like that. And that's actually the National Oceanographic Atmospheric and Administration. They put those mooring balls in so nobody has to anchor at the reef. And there's different markers for where you might be able to run aground. So if you've been down here and you've been diving and you've seen us pull up to those mooring balls, that's more than just convenience. That's to protect the bottom and the reef, and even anchoring in the sand. As much as that seems like, that would be really easy to do. They don't want any disturbance on the bottom inside the sanctuary, or really even outside the sanctuary.
I see. So, as someone that wears so many different hats, DJ, what is one of those things that you try and get across your captains on how they're going to handle the boats in the marina and at the dive sites themselves?
Well, usually we use a GPS to navigate there, but really in the Keys, it's not too hard. There's a few places that if you're not paying attention, you could probably run aground on the way to, for example, Key Largo Dry Rocks, which is the Christ statue. But I was going to show you guys, since I'm roving, a little bit of show and tell. Um, so this is the helm of the Tropical Voyager, and we basically um, obviously pilot the vessel from here. And this was the GPS we were talking about, and you can see if we zoom in on, uh, Key Largo Harbor, that's where we're at right now. But when we pinch out, we follow these tracks out to the different reefs. So, for example, that's Mosquito Bank. You could hit that, and then we were just talking about Molasses Reef. That's all right out here. And it's about 6 miles from shore. So we actually transfer from basically state waters to federal waters, and then we're right out here. So this is the rest of the helm. You can see that we have the tacks, and then we also have our Maritron system here. So when we fire up the boat, you can hear that fire up. You can get all the readouts on this. So we can switch pages if you're interested in looking at different stuff. So we run the boats very efficiently, and the engine load is what matters a whole lot. And we do that to burn less fuel, take weight off the boat, and burn as little fuel as we can. So we have them propped a special way, and we kind of run them in a very specific way to minimize, basically our carbon footprint as much as we can.
It almost seems like if more people could be concerned with the carbon footprint of just basic boat maintenance and boat handling, we could start making a difference, even just from the boating community.
Well, it doesn't sound like much, but this past year we figured out, I'll turn the motors off so you don't have to listen to them. We figured out actually how to burn thousands of gallons less fuel here at Rainbow Reef. Obviously, we have a bunch of boats and whatnot, but we started to fill our fuel tanks up to 60%, and we called that full. Now, to put that in perspective, a boat like this has two 250-gallon tanks. So the way it works with power and motor and load and actually fuel burn is the more weight you're pushing, the more fuel you're burning. So most boats, for convenience, or just like your car, you don't really go to the convenience store and fill up your car to 60% because you're like, I'm here, I'm going to fill it all the way up. So we did that for a long time, but then it occurred to us that if we filled it up to 60%, we would be taking almost 1 ton off of the weight of the vessel. And if you think about that, that's a lot of weight. And we actually did the calculations and we figured out that we would save about $18,000 in terms of fuel. And I don't remember off the top of my head how many gallons less of fuel, but it was about 1 gallon per boat per trip. And we run hundreds of trips per year on each boat. So it really adds up, and we really felt like that was a step in the right direction in terms of trying to run the boats as efficiently as we could.
That's remarkable. That's remarkable that so much, yeah, so much planning that could go into something that could help minimize the drag could make such a difference. That kind of reminds me of the way that we try and dive as scuba divers as well, which is to minimize and to streamline things as best as we can, right? Like for instance, if we're gonna think that we're gonna dive self-reliantly, that's great. We're gonna have an extra tank. But then we've got an extra tank. So we've got to worry about that extra tank. So we need to have a we need to have an SMB. Remember we talked about the DSMB the other day. Well, do we want one of these big bulky ones? Do we want one that fits in our pocket? Do we want to have a smaller reel? Um, David, why don't you talk to us a little bit about streamlining and what kind of courses that we can actually take to help us streamline?
Sure. Well, I think the most important course to help us streamline is peak performance buoyancy. Streamlining is exactly what it sounds like. It's a way to have your gear with as few things sort of flying about, with not putting air in your BC as a way of sort of controlling yourself from going up and down and constantly pumping air in and putting air out, because that suggests you're wearing too much weight. But to really just be as slender with as few protuberances as possible while you're in the water. And that's basically what peak performance buoyancy, the specialty, is all about. We start off by helping you to really find out how much weight you really need to be working on, and then how you can really control sort of your position in the water with slow, controlled breathing rather than using your BC. And peak performance buoyancy skills make you a more relaxed diver. You use a lot less air. And it becomes relevant, as we've talked about so much, as we've talked about other things like dive against debris and wreck diving and deep diving and night diving. All of that sort of depends to maximize your enjoyment on streamlining. So that's why it's so important.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's amazing how just those little things, that little bit of weight that DJ and his crew discovered on the boat can make such a difference. For instance, Nate, I know that when you were working on a course recently, you were playing with taking some weight off or maybe putting some weight back. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So a lot of what peak performance buoyancy and just streamlining has to do with is the position of the weights on your BCD or gear. Like if you have all your weight on your feet, for example, obviously you're going to sink feet first. That's not how diving works. So for the most part, a lot of people put weights in their BC, usually on their chest pockets or right around the like the stomach area, so that when you're going down and you're diving and you're looking at all the pretty fish, you're completely horizontal. Some people have a different shaped body. Some people float. Some people sink. Some people do whatever. So it's up for you as a diver to figure out where the most effective place to put your weight. Some people are going to need more. One thing that you'll learn is that girls are naturally more buoyant than guys. For whatever reason, that's how it is. So a girl who's about my size, my weight, my everything may have different weight than me, or another guy, or another girl, or whatever. So when it comes down to weight, the placement, if you have a lot of weight on your stomach, you might be more inclined to face towards the bottom of the ocean, where everything is nice. Whereas you put all the weight on the back near your tank, unless you're offsetting other weight, you're going to be spinning around and looking up at the sun.
Okay, I, I think you may be virtually slapped at some point by all those women that you just said are more floaty. But I think it can be said that yes, it is true. Sometimes people do have floaty feet, or other portions of their anatomies do float differently. So it's all about where you position things, much like you would want to position things properly on a boat. DJ, can you tell us a little bit something more about perhaps proper weight distribution, or some other things that you may do on a boat to help with that? And also, what does it mean when you say that you have a 46-foot Newton?
Well, let's see if we can put it into some perspective. Um, that's the bow of the boat. This is the helm of the boat. This is the basically, the top deck, and then we can head downstairs. And 46 really just refers to the length overall of the vessel. It's actually about 50 feet long length overall because it has a swim platform back there. And in case you were ever wondering what runs on a dive, or what makes a dive boat run, uh, we use all Cummins and all Caterpillar motors. So it's either or in any of the boats. And then the last thing I was going to try to show you today is the other way that we try to have great boat maintenance and not have major mechanical breakdowns, which is key to not missing dive trips. And what we do is, hopefully you can see this pretty well. We have our own system that we wrote that we keep track of our fuel logs and everything else, and then these are all the boats. And what you end up with is reminders and all the different things that we have to do on a boat. So we got some red problems here because we haven't run trips in a little while that we'll have to take care of. But like, we're on board the Tropical Legend, so now I can log into the Legend and see all the different reminders. And then what we do is we log trips. So instead of doing it on paper, or instead of just kind of keeping some kind of paper log that doesn't mean anything, when we actually set up and follow our logs, they all get entered this way, and then all the boats end up, with every single trip logged. So a captain can look on here and say, hey, the turbo PSI seems a little high. You can look back at the historical records and figure out, is there something going on? Maybe the water temperature's a little high. And when you don't blow motors and blow, oil all over the place and stuff like that, that obviously helps. But basically, we can concatenate all of this data and use it to efficiently, or more efficiently, run the boats. And this is one of the ways that we discovered exactly how many gallons per hour we were burning, because we logged it. We took the averages, and then we did all that math to figure out how we were going to actually fill the fuel tanks less, take the weight off, and then more efficiently run the boats.
Well, there you go, folks. It sounds like running a boat isn't all that different from being a diver, because you want to make sure that you've got the right amount of gear. You want to make sure that it's all working. You want to make sure that you've got a checklist, right? So maybe it's safe to say that the way that we're trained as instructors and divers is to think like a diver and think like an instructor. Maybe it's safe to say that boat captains need to learn how to think like a boat captain, right? That's pretty impressive stuff. David, we were talking about the Project Aware and the dive against debris and how it relates to us conservationally. We hear from DJ how important it is for him and all of the Rainbow Reef family to be conservationally minded, not just with our divers but with our boats. What might be some other aspects that we will learn during the Project Aware specialty that's coming up on the 25th and again on the 29th, that we may learn during the Project Aware specialty that we could just give a little taste of to our audience out there?
I would say there's a couple of different things. I mean, one of the things that you'll learn, just to put things into perspective, is how massive the oceans are, how much water there is, but also how much the life of the ocean is concentrated on the coral reef. So it really sort of makes you think, wow, I really need to care about these coral reefs, because it's a just hugely enormous percentage of the ocean's life can be found there, and also in the mangroves and other areas that we're all trying to protect. So that sort of gives you a sense of what we're dealing with. But then, Project Aware talks about the 10 things that we can do. It's a list, you might have seen it in our dive shop, of things that you can do as a diver, including things like have good buoyancy. That's why we talk so much about peak performance buoyancy. Things as simple as not kicking the reefs, and also, trash, dive against debris. Trash is a huge, huge problem, and people are very careless about throwing trash out, including those soda holders, those plastic soda holders, which literally kill turtles and other things. So you're going to learn both about what the problem is and why it is a problem, but also specific steps that you can do as a scuba diver to help make things better, or at least not to make things worse, which I think at this point we really want to encourage people who don't know better first to not make things worse, and then we can try to make things better.
Nice, nice, absolutely. Some other things will be about our carbon footprint, being just talking about air conditioning, for instance,
Yep.
or maybe being eco-friendly, eco fisheries, sustainably fisheries. So we've come to that portion of the of our show. We've had our roving reporter. Now we get to talk a little bit more about just some dives, because let's face it, folks, we haven't had enough scuba snacks. We had a bit of a scuba meal on some of this information, which is really good. But now I want to talk diving. I want to talk what's the most coolest thing you saw underwater, or the coolest dive that you've done. Nate, why don't we go back to you?
For the coolest dive I've ever done is the drift dives. Those are so cool. I love gearing up and the boat being in neutral and then just going. You don't have to wait around for anything. As long as you do it nice, safe, and secure, and all of that, it's an absolute blast. I love the dive itself. As for the coolest thing I've seen underwater, I love squids. They're just the little tiny ones. I think they're absolutely adorable, and the fact that they just look so unlike anything else in the oceans I've seen, at least so far, I can't get enough of them.
Yeah, squids are cool. Squids are cool, and definitely making sure that you do those proper dive etiquette things that Captain Jim was talking about a couple episodes ago. So that if you are going to do a hot drop, Captain makes sure that he says dive, 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 which are those magical words to our ears, because that's really what we all want to hear: is the pool's open, folks. Dive, dive, dive. Um, Back to our roving reporter, DJ. What was some of the most? What is one of the most magnificent dives that you've been on, or most memorable?
Well, I guess relative to Key Largo, and stemming off of what Nate said, One of the very first drift dives I ever did in my life was just south of Key Largo on a place called Conch Wall. We dive there a couple times a week. And my brother and I were swimming down the wall, just kind of drifting with the current. So, not doing too much swimming. And basically, the current almost always prevails to the northeast. So, you basically drop in on the southwest side of the end of the reef, and you kind of drift towards the Aquarius Undersea Center, and that's a prohibited area, so you can't go in there. But you kind of see when you're drifting that wall why they put it there. So I was kind of meandering along, and I had a camera, and it was this is quite some time ago. It was a film camera, not a digital camera, and there were rumors of black coral being out there on the wall, and I thought I found some, and it probably wasn't really black coral. I'm sitting there trying to take a picture of it, and my brother swims over and just whacks me in the head and points up to the top of the wall. And there was a school of manta rays swimming up current, just following a bunch of, feeder fish. And I still have the pictures to this day on print pictures where I tried to frame them in. There was so many of them that I tried to, start on the left and just take a picture, move the camera over like a frame length, take another picture. And that would definitely be one of my, early and still to, most memorable dives I've ever done in Key Largo.
That's amazing. That's the kind of stuff that keeps you going back. And it's the kind of stuff that makes you remember that we really have to protect this underwater world, because it's incredible. I mean, it is such a gift. David, what would be your most incredible moment or most memorable or something you'd like to share with us?
I could actually share a few things, but what I want to share today is a recent dive at Five Caves, which is at one end of French Reef. There had been for a few days, we knew, this giant Goliath grouper in one of the caves, and it happens to be a cave that's sort of double wide, so you could actually swim into the cave with the grouper. And I told the divers that we were going in. It was there 2 days ago. We're going to go see if he's there again. And we came down to the cave, and I saw he was in there, but he was facing away, and the divers wanted to go in, but I told them not to, that we needed to swim over the reef so that way we could come in head first. And he's there like this, and we're just swimming right by him. And it's just this enormous, he's like a Volkswagen, just hanging out in the cave. And it was just unreal swimming just through the cave right by him. He didn't move. He wasn't worried about us. Everybody had good buoyancy. So that was pretty outstanding, I have to say.
Fantastic. Well, we want to hear more of your favorite dives. We want to see some photos too. Post them. Let us see them. Let us share them. I see a number of you have already mentioned some stuff, the Kitawaki, the Dwayne, the Bid, the Spiegel Grove. But let us know about these dives that you've done. Give us some more scuba snacks so that we can share. The best part about scuba snacks, you can double dip. That's okay. It's all allowed. It's all fat free, and we just get to share it, even at 6 feet apart. It doesn't make any difference. So thank you all for sharing with us today. We really loved sharing some of our information with you. We hope that you'll join us for the Project Aware on the 25th or the 29th. There's more information on our Facebook page. Go ahead and send an instant message or just a private message to us if you want some more information, and we'll get that to you. And please share some of those scuba snacks with us. We just love hearing about it. We love sharing them. And for myself and for the rest of the panelists, I'd like to say, dive, dive, dive. Have fun. Live with all those scuba snacks. And join us for the next time on Talk Dive Live.
Thank you.
See you guys around.